what are the safety systems that remain in place when tuning? I am trying to reconcile the fact that tunes can have a negative impact on long-term reliability while remaining safe. Well, I'll just state generally speaking, um, engine and turbo systems or supercharger systems or engines in general have a level of stress and load that causes them to wear at various rates. In many cases, increasing the load or the forces or the strain reduces the life some amount. The OEMs do really extensive long-term testing. Like they drive. I know one time we were talking to some Audi engineers, and they were talking about they drove an Audi A4 like 2 million miles, and then they find out all the things that break. So they basically,
That's years worth of data collection.
yeah, like lifetimes worth of mileage in a very short period of time to collect that information. And the OEMs, they have to build cars that will get through the warranty period with the least number of issues. And so that, I think I talked about this last time, like they're typically targeting like 5 failures per million cars or something really, really small, like basically zero. And so because of that, they will run the systems well within their capabilities. Now we know that things can be pushed harder. We're not the first company to start tuning vehicles. This litter goes back, decades. But even for Volkswagens and Audis, and like the Motronic era, starting in the late '90s, we know that there's a lot of built-in unused capacity in turbocharger systems from the factory, and that there is a safe amount of that capacity that can be put to work and eliminated for the benefit of increased horsepower and acceleration. So on the typical Audi 2.0, there's an extra 50 to 75 horsepower just sitting in the stock turbo that's being unutilized, and it's very well known and accepted that you can use that amount of it and really not change the long-term reliability.
Yeah, and so much of that actually comes down to a couple of different things that are not necessarily ultimate performance related. They're more it's kind of an OEM take on it where, say, at sea level, you hit the gas, you get a certain amount of power. The OEM ideally wants you to be at, Lake Tahoe, you hit the gas, you get the exact same amount of power.
Right.
So they'll leave
They have that capacity.
they'll leave either capacity or plan for that capacity to be there so that you've got the exact same
That's right.
sensation, no matter where you are in the world. We can take that and basically run the motor or run the components at, this higher, pretend you're at a higher altitude. All of those components would be doing that day in, day out, no matter what. We can do that at sea level as well. So then you bring that additional headroom down to sea level. Now, will that mean you're going to make a little less power comparatively at altitude? Yeah, but that's going to be a faster car, at a lower altitude. So there's things that are built in where we may not even be exceeding the OEM's, tolerances, but making a lot more power on most of the cars out there. Depending on where they are. So there's overheads that are the OEM uses in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah, I mean, anyone asking themselves this question, it's a perfectly good question, and I've addressed this concern many, many times over the last 20 years, is, you're not the only one doing it, right? So there are cases where people DIY stuff, and they're the only ones, they're figuring it out for the first time. But by the time we bring something to market, it's been extensively tested. Our priority is to bring products to market that do not cause failures. That's a very, very bad outcome.
We would not be able to continue on for very long if we just put out these failure prone solutions.
It's like a helicopter tour pilot doesn't want his helicopter to crash. Do helicopters crash sometimes? Yes, but like the guy's in the helicopter with you. And we're with you when you buy our products. We can't just sell you something and then pretend it didn't break. We're here. It's a small community. Everybody knows who we are. You guys know who I am, Nate. We're very open. So our priority is to always bring products to market that do not fail. But then by the time you do it, there's been hundreds or thousands of customers who have done it as well. And again, this entire thing, what we're doing, say for B9 and B8, is something that we've been doing for years. And so we know how much margin there is. We know what variables to look for that dictate what's stressed. At some point, basically, the issue on all these is the rods are going to bend at some point, at some torque level. Very rarely do turbos have problems. With
Usually
these
it's an
increased
inherent either an OEM issue or it's but
the was it the IS-38?
yeah,
And the
IS-20,
IS-20
IS-20 and IS-38s went through
they
multiple
did, but
revisions.
it was a problem with their shaft. The turbo shaft was too small, and it would fail on stock cars. So and then of course, as tuners tuned it, the turbos failed at even a higher rate because there was even more stress more often. But once the turbo was fixed, the tuning didn't change.
Right.
So the tuning wasn't really the problem. It was IHI.
Yeah.
They made a shitty turbo, and they ended up, I think, like 5 or 6 revisions
Yeah,
at least.
at least to correct that.
No, we like thick, beefy shafts on turbos. So yeah, but it's a perfectly good question to ask.
Yep, they should be asking it. I mean, that's
There have been, I mean, there's one company in particular that had a rash of 2.0T engine failures because they stressed and pushed things too far, took them way too long to figure it out. There are instances of this happening, but even that company too slowly realized that there was a problem and corrected it. They no longer have this problem with engine failures, but it's a valid concern. But by the the 50th guy who blew up his motor, it was out there. All he had to do was go online and look, and the word gets around. So, like I said, great question to ask. There is this extra capacity, and I don't know, like maybe a stock B9S4 turbo will go like 600,000 miles, and maybe after we tune it, it only goes 350,000. And we don't even know.
it's one of those
like,
things
there's-
that's without exhaust, like testing a huge number of cars to death.
There's very likely
Whatever.
some reduction in longevity, but it's well within what anyone would accept in the range of what's possible. So yeah,
You have outline failures like random. We had
Of course.
like 1,000
Oh, the OEM
completely stock.
Yeah. Right. There's OEM issues that from the factory. Not every car is assembled perfectly at times, and
or there's defective
component
units.
issue or
yeah. No, again, Audi says 5 out of a million can fail, so you got one of those. Of course, then they have recalls, and there are times where they don't get that right.